welcome back to another episode of Rob and Amos Ramble. We're back in the podcast studio today. No hikes while we're doing. Although we do want to do more of that. That was fun. I thought.
Was fun. Yeah, it was fun. I didn't hate it.
I'm working in other news. I've got a little stash I'm working on here. I got some work colleagues that are doing the whole Movember thing, and I succumbed to the pressure to participate. So you're not big on me having facial hair. It's not one of your favorites.
No, it's not my favorite.
But
It's itchy.
yeah, it's a little itchy. It's not my favorite either. I'm not used to having hair on my face or that much hair. I mean, I usually will have a little scruff going, but not.
Yeah.
I don't usually let it grow into anything substantial.
It's just temporary.
Yeah, it's just temporary.
It'll be
It's
fine.
No big deal. Something a little different.
Is it professional?
Is it professional? I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's going to be by the end of the month. I mean, we're just a couple days in here, and I've already got almost a serious stash working here a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
But we established, per the rules, you can probably trim it. Like, you can keep it looking nice.
The Movember rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have to grow.
I have to. Yeah, I don't really know what the exact rules are. Like, do I need to I don't think it's like unencumbered growth.
Yeah, no.
So yeah,
No.
I'll probably be able to shave it up. But I've never rocked a mustache before, so I don't really know what's involved in that. But I'll figure it out. Anyway, so some big news yesterday. I was up late, way too late, watching election stuff. I think it was after midnight till I went to bed. You were asleep well before that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were soundly sleeping, and that's great. I'm glad you have that ability and felt able to. I was a little more drawn into what was going on. But former president, 45, Trump, won the election.
Mm-hmm.
And,
So I heard this morning.
Yeah. And so now he's going to be number 47.
Yeah.
So it's a very polarizing topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been, man, it's, yesterday ahead of the election, I'm talking about my personal life. I'm not talking about this RA ramble or, we're not anonymous. But like, we're not interacting with our friends and family on that really haven't any idea that we even have this account out there and are doing this little project.
Yeah.
So other accounts like Facebook and, just other places we interact with people who are, know us personally a little more. Saw a lot of posts just, ahead of the election and people kind of talking about, their feelings and why they're doing what they're doing, and and on both sides, as well as afterwards. Today, I've seen and I even shared some of my thoughts, a little bit on the RA ramble, but also like different, a little more detailed, just kind of sharing some of the things that I thought amongst our friends, which spurred some good conversation.
Yeah.
But I think, man, where do we go from here, right? I mean, the country still feels very polarized in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot of very sharp differences in the direction that this country should go. But I thought maybe we could kick that around, and I don't know if we can kind of tie it back to what that means for families and marriage. But I think it's important, for people to understand. I think like why are people? I mean, I have not run into a lot of people, at least in my personal life. I mean, online a little bit different, but the people that we know personally and the people that I know that are supportive of Trump, they are still have reservations about Trump and
Sure.
and his behavior and just some of the things, that they're not necessarily crazy about him as a person.
Yeah.
But I think, I think for people to kind of, they're upset about what happened yesterday, to help them process that, I think it'd be good for them to understand kind of the bigger picture of really what's going on in this country. That maybe if you're someone out there who, maybe you were like all about, you wanted Kamala to win, anybody but Trump, and you're not understanding what's happening here. And I saw a lot of it today, and I saw a lot of it leading up to the election. And like, how on earth can anybody vote for Donald Trump, who, by a lot of accounts is, just, he has some character flaws, right?
Yeah. Character flaws. He's a felon. I mean, I saw a lot of things.
Yeah, you saw a lot of things. And yeah, I mean, whether he's a felon or not is arguable in terms of
Right.
how he ended up there and was that justified. But regardless, yes, technically, yes, felon and all these things. And, and so people are pointing those things out and just very, painting him to be a person of poor character. Mm-hmm. I would say, and I would group Trump into this, I believe that anyone who seeks that much power, and I'm not just, any politician, mm-hmm. probably has some character flaws. You're probably doing it because you have some character flaws.
Well, right. Your character is what drives you to chase after that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like it's a certain character of person that likes that.
And to want to hold, purposely seek that much power over people, to wield over them.
Yeah.
You've probably got some character flaws, right? So I think
wielding power, they're not here to help us.
No, I don't think they're. Yeah, I mean, they say they are.
I know. I'm kidding.
We'll see. We'll see where this new administration is going to go. But having said that, I think just kind of looking at the people and the citizens of this country, people are struggling, in a lot of ways. And I don't know that the people who are struggling to understand the people who are voting for Donald Trump, I really think you kind of have to rewind this all the way back to 2016 when he first ran, and understand that the platform that he really ran on was draining the swamp.
Right.
And that was really the message, right? Like, get the corruption out. Mm-hmm. Your government's abusing you. And that connected with a lot of people on a lot of levels. I mean, people feel abused by their government, and that is true on all sides.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody on all sides feels in some way abused by their government.
Right.
They believe their government is overstepping, putting its nose in where it shouldn't be.
There was big talk, too, that he's a businessman and not a politician at the time as well.
Yes.
So he was approaching it with a different mindset.
Yes. Yeah. And some would argue that's good. Some would argue that's bad. But yeah, I mean, that was another kind of defining factor. But I think, going back to this, draining the swamp, I mean, that is a message that can connect with a lot of people, really, no matter what your political affiliation is, right? Because if you're liberal, you feel that the government is overstepping its bounds in some areas, mm-hmm. right? And you point out all the disasters that government can have, just like conservatives do. If you didn't believe that, you wouldn't care who was in office, right? We fight over who's in office because we care about how abusive our government is towards us.
Yeah.
So when Trump in 2016 is out there and he's running on this drain the swamp, right? Get rid of the corruption, get rid of the people who are abusing you, get rid of, all those things. That was really a message that connected with people. Mm-hmm. And I think in a lot of ways, it gave people a voice who have been feeling that and had no mechanism to express it in a meaningful way. And they saw Trump as a vehicle to express the anger they felt for the abuses they feel at the hands of their government. Mm. And, we know what happened in 2016. He got elected. during his presidency. I mean, I would argue that he did. I mean, he didn't drain the swamp. That
No.
didn't happen. If anything, he potentially added to the swamp, right? Or the swamp swallowed him up.
Yeah.
And and then that kind of continued, into his presidency, after his presidency, and kind of all things. And to your point about him becoming a felon, and there was, but this underlying current of people feeling like they had a mechanism to voice, or to give a voice to this anger that they have about feeling abused by their government. That didn't go away, regardless of what happened to Trump, right? And it just festered, and it continued to fester, because I think people seeing the things and the attacks that were going on with Trump, they didn't really. It wasn't so much the attacks on him personally; it was the attacks on the ideal that he represented, right? So people are like, drain the swamp, get rid of the corruption. The government needs to stop abusing us. And they're attacking that ideal via Trump, right? Which is getting more people fired up and fired up and fired up. And there was a lot of things, like we said, the court cases and the impeachments, and there's still a lot of swirling around about if the 2020 election was fair and how there was manipulation, and all of these things that are continuing to fester. And, so now we get to 2024, and that none of that has gone away. And kind of adding to the complication of it, some of the topics that we normally talk about on this podcast here with, the relationship woes and the men and women, and men, kind of the whole red pill thing with men, feeling very disenfranchised by feminism and these things. And you kind of roll all of that together with feeling abused by your government, and feeling abused, in some ways because, men are feeling, women are potentially being treated more fairly than men are in the eyes of the government, and all these things. And you're kind of brewing this perfect storm of very frustrated people who are looking at what is the best way I can communicate to the government in a peaceful manner my frustration. And that became Trump.
Okay.
And I think that's what you saw yesterday. I think that's exactly what you saw yesterday. I think it was just people needed an outlet for their frustration. I know they're still kind of combing through all the statistics and things, but it sounds like you had a lot of men, that normally would not have voted, that got out and voted. They were motivated to do it. And surprisingly, it sounds like you actually had quite a number of women. It sounds like specifically white women that also got out and voted. That kind of added to it, and voted for Trump in some ways. Now, what is that dynamic? Is that husbands? I don't know what that dynamic is. I mean, we would kind of fall into that. We've talked about that here before. Like, you don't really care to pay attention to politics.
No.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to follow this conversation, if I'm being honest.
You're over there yawning at one point. Yeah.
No, you just edit that out.
No, we don't edit anything out here. So, but yeah, so it's where's I going with this? Okay,
I don't care to pay.
You don't care about politics.
It takes a lot of time and attention and understanding, from my point of view, to really get into the politics and understand the issues. And
then you have all of the media and social media manipulation and trying to wade through that and understanding what's true from what's not true. And it's understanding this stuff can really almost be a full-time job if you really want to try to understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you take that.
Yes.
You take that role in our family, and we discuss topics that we're passionate about all the time.
Yes.
And so my passions, and basically you just inform me how we're going to vote.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the last time we talked about this, the way you put it is you trust me with your life.
Yeah.
Like, why would you not trust me with your vote? Because, if I'm making the decision I think is the best thing for our family, you're going to go with that, right? You're not going to fight me on that.
But, and part of that is that I know because we discuss our issues. Like, I know that we align on all of the issues. And even if we don't, you're doing what's best for the family.
Yeah, there's some trust there. And we've talked about that before. I mean, there are certainly times we don't see things the same way, but there always has to be a leader, and you'll just defer to me.
Yeah. And knowing that my feelings on life and all of that, and knowing that I don't put in the time and energy to understanding the issues and the candidates and
yes.
So, from a lack of knowledge, I lean on you.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's a trust that gets developed over time, right? Because you understand that I understand you, and I understand your needs, and we've been together long enough and worked through the issues to know that I do have your best interest in mind. And when I'm making decisions, I'm not just haphazardly making them. So there's trust there. Right. That you're like, So,
I mean, I think the last time I voted without your influence, I voted for Ross Perot.
Yeah. That was a long time ago. Were we even together then? When did Perot run? It was probably.
Technically, I think we were just coming together.
Yeah. Because that probably would have been the, Yeah, that's probably right.
Anyways, after that, you definitely started influencing my voting.
Yeah. So kind of where we were going with that is, it sounds like a lot of, specifically white women voted for Trump that wasn't necessarily expected in the polls and the projections and things that they were doing. At least that's my understanding today. One day on the other side of the election, and this stuff is still being worked through. So, and this right here is kind of an example of that. So I wonder, like, where, is that where these women came from? Were these women that were in marriages and they were just like, hey, I'm just gonna vote with my husband.
Yeah.
Who we know that that men specifically definitely tend to be more conservative leaning. I mean, there are liberal men out there for sure, but in terms of the greater numbers, there's more conservative men. So if these women are, voting alongside their conservative man, however that's happening in that relationship, like, does that explain it? I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, I feel like if you're opposing your husband on vote, why go vote? If you're just going to cancel each other out, like, save the time.
Yeah, save the time and the fuel. Yeah, I do get that. I guess a counter argument to that is if you don't go vote, even if you're canceling each other out, that's 2 fewer votes that at least communicate to the parties that you do care. You're out there and you are watching and you do care, right? So I think, we only had, don't quote me on this. I can't remember where the numbers ended up landing, but, let's just say it was like 80 million or 90 million or 80, I don't know, whatever it is, votes per candidate roughly. Trump did win the popular vote. So whatever that number is, he had more, compared to the total population of this country, there's still quite a few people that don't vote.
Yeah.
And if that number was closer to, hey, like 99% of the people in the country are voting, it might make these politicians sit up a little more and kind of pay attention that, people really do care about this issue versus half the country voting or less than that or whatever it is, right? And they're just like, well, you're only like, why do I care so much if half the country doesn't even care?
Yeah.
So that would be my argument against that. But I understand what you're saying from a practical point of view. Like, you're both in the same precinct.
Yeah.
Like, why cancel each other out? But I think that would be a topic obviously you'd want to discuss. We know some couples that are kind of unequally yoked when it comes to politics, and I don't know how does how do those marriages work? And I'm trying to think of the marriages that we know where that's the case. Are they good marriages? I mean, are those marriages working or are those marriages surviving?
I would lean towards the surviving.
They're surviving.
I
yeah.
mean, just from a voting standpoint and opposing votes, one couple we know, like they agreed to not vote because they were going to cancel each other one out, and one of them went out and voted in secret.
In secret, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, how much that's a lack of trust right there.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's humorous.
It is kind of, it's a little funny, but yeah, but it's, it's like sleeping with the enemy kind of a thing.
They got 2 votes.
Yeah.
Because they didn't get their canceled vote, basically.
Yeah. So I don't know how those relationships really work. And maybe that's the answer is they're not working and they're just surviving. And,
Or they're just not.
I mean, they're working.
They're not aligned.
They're still
They're
married,
not really
but is it as really fulfilling?
Yeah. Are they really on the same page?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Just seems like it's.
Yeah.
I mean, not the kind of marriage I'd want to be in.
No. I mean, even like we know people that are unequally yoked on the 2A front.
Yeah.
And the wife would be like, no, you can't have guns in my house. And like, I've never really understood that either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I was about to say is like kind of on the political topic. If you don't see it the same way and then there's all these issues like the 2A, abortion, immigration, like, all these hot topic issues that you're going to have differing opinions on. And how do you hold your household together? And you just gave a very practical example. The husband's like, I think we should have a gun for defense. And the wife's like, no way you're bringing a gun in here. Like, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah. Oh, by the way, and he said guns, plural.
Guns.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
Like if somebody, I mean, let's talk about abortion. If you have one opinion and they have another, like, how do you respect that person?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. That's why I say, like, we don't have that. So it's hard to kind of understand how that might work. And I guess the argument is it's not really working. It's just surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not truly aligned. Like you can't really, like, I don't really know what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what we should say, just kind of with the theme that we always talk about is like, you should probably be having those discussions. They might be very difficult discussions to have, but if you're trying to kind of fortify your marriage and have the best marriage you can and protect your marriage the best you can, I would think you'd want to resolve that somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, let's get on the same page, and like, and that may mean, one spouse giving up their view.
Yeah. I mean, if you simplify it down to, hey, let's go out to dinner. I want seafood. You want steaks, right? Like somebody's going to give up what they want. But in the case of dinner, you can have seafood one night and steak the next, but it's not like that in politics, right? Like you can't be for abortion one day and not the next.
Right. Or the gun's home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's out of the house the rest of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it gets more complicated for sure, but I don't know. I can't really think of a major topic we've disagreed on though.
Yeah, I can't. Well, like we've said, I mean, we've been together since we were young, so I think we kind of like, as these opinions were getting formed, we kind of formed them together.
Yeah.
Through young adulthood into, later adulthood. And so maybe that's part of the explanation. But I think we would, I mean, we would now, I mean, we would definitely just work through it. And I think also you would just end up deferring to me because that's how it goes. Right. So,
but I mean, in that we would have a conversation and I would be heard and I would know that no matter what your decision was.
Yeah. And then you would respect the decision no matter what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's healthy. I don't think I've said many times, look, the husband, your role is not tyrant. right? The
Yeah.
role is not like, you're going to do exactly what I say. I'm not going to hear you. I don't care what you have to say.
Yeah.
Just do what I tell you to do,
Yeah.
right? That's not caring for your wife and caring for your marriage,
Yeah.
right? You need to hear your wife. There are going to be times she's going to have valid concerns to talk through, right? And you need to genuinely consider that stuff. And the fact that you're being genuine is how you actually build the trust that she's going to defer to you, right? Because she knows that she's heard,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that that you do have her best interest in mind, and that doesn't happen overnight.
Right. Yeah.
So,
For sure.
so where was I going here? So,
I don't know. I corner questioned us away.
yeah, kind of. It wasn't too much of a corner question, but yeah, it's so where does the country go from here? I don't know. I will say, it was a little bit hopeful today, especially as having some kind of, just interactions with people that we know personally that view these things different than we do. Some things I shared on social media. That actually thanked me for my point of view, even though they disagreed with me, and thanked me for the the just having respectful conversation. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what we all want.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And it helps us to kind of understand each other a little bit better.
Yeah.
And, that would do us a lot of good if we could just get there. Right. But that's not, people being polarized, it makes them easier to manipulate. And so, those who are doing the manipulation don't want us having those conversations, and so they're going to do the things to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
As much as they can.
Right.
So, but that is, I think, ultimately the answer. And I think, I wouldn't even say ultimately the answer is, I think we need to greatly reduce the size of government.
Right.
Like, great government needs to be significantly reduced in size and scope, and we need decentralization of government. That is, to me, that is really the only long-term fix, because no matter how much we talk on some of these topics, and it can be respectful discussion. It can be a respectful discussion, but no matter how much you and those that you disagree with talk about it, there's going to be topics you're just not going to see eye to eye. And then you end up, and you have a party, one of these parties who's like, well, then I'm just going to force myself on you using the power of government, which we call legislation. I'm going to legislate what I want for you into law. And that's why we have this political fighting, because we weaponize the law against our neighbors for the things that we want to see in society.
Yeah.
So take that component out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just give people more freedom. If you want it, you do it. I don't want to prevent you from doing it.
Right.
Right? In the same way, don't prevent me from doing it. Right? Doesn't that seem more fair? Like that would be, to me, that would be the fix. And I'm not saying we don't need some form of government. I understand. I mean, you do need a basic framework. But man, we're not even close to that.
No.
Like, we could so greatly dial back what we have, which would put more money in all of our pockets, right? And then, if we could take the further step of decentralizing it to where we take all this great concentration of power in DC and move as much of it back to the states as we can, well, that gives us even less things to fight about.
Yeah.
Right? Because I no longer, like, who is the president and who is in Congress has a lot less bearing on my life than who my governor is and my state senators.
Right.
So you're still going to have some fighting, but you're having it at the state level and not the nation level, right? Which would also help to dial back some of this stuff. So,
but they're attacking, the government is attacking our ability to sort of network, and like, I know this week they took the squirrel and the raccoon, and then they also did the raw milk guy Was selling the raw milk.
Was this the Amish guy? I think
so.
I think
yeah.
I missed that. I saw people talking about it today, and that was one of the things. Pennsylvania was a key state in the election, and Trump winning the election. And I saw people talking about, like I'm guessing that the government was, the people currently running the government were sorry they attacked the Amish over the raw milk. I saw some references to that, but I don't really have the full background.
I mean, there's more stories than that, like coming along, and I think so. Like you take the Amish, for instance, like one man makes milk, another man makes corn, another man makes wheat, and they all sort of trade their goods and they work together. And so as the families break down, we're getting farther and farther away from that, which means more and more public health services have to come around, like for helping people, whereas your family used to help you or your community used to help you. And so now they're taking our money, putting it into programs, and they're helping people on, quote, our behalf. Yeah. Or if they give that back to us, then we have more money to pour into our communities and help the people that we choose to help.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're taking money out of our pockets and they're putting it into things that don't affect us personally.
Right. We have no passion for those things sometimes.
Not to say those things are not important. Right. I mean, some of those things are important. Many of them are not.
Yeah.
But some of those things are important. But it doesn't mean those things won't happen. If people had more money in their pockets to be able to voluntarily do those things,
yes,
they would do it.
They would support the things that they're personally passionate about
with
more money than they have now to support the things that they're personally passionate about.
I mean, with the state of inflation and the amount that we're taxed and all these things, like people are being forced into this box to where they have no additional. I'm talking about the general public, right?
Right.
I mean, there are certainly exceptions to this,
about the bell curve again.
But the general public doesn't have the means and the extra money to put into these, something that they're passionate about, that they care about, because the government's taking it. Right.
And using it for programs that, I mean, a lot of the programs I wouldn't choose to put my money in.
Yeah. I mean, how much more money do we need to send to Ukraine?
Yeah.
Or, whatever. Yeah.
But certainly there's people passionate about that. And so they would do their own fundraisers and they would send their money.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. Right. Like, let us all kind of be led by the passion that we're led by. Mm-hmm. But in order to do that, people have to have the freedom to do it. And right now, you're not allowing people the freedom to do it.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of coming back to, like, what was this whole Trump thing all about? People want their freedom back. People are sick of the government abusing them. Yeah. And they feel very abused by the government. And Trump is being seen as the mechanism to voice that concern to the people running government.
Yeah.
Now, what is Trump going to do with it? Now that the people have put him there, they've voiced their concern.
Yeah.
They put someone there, and that's the message that's behind it. I mean, is he going to make good on, because he did in his first term?
No. One could argue that he was learning.
One could argue that he was learning. Yeah.
Right. Having not been a politician, I think he sort of just jumped into the deep end. And I heard him say he picked a few bad people to surround himself with, that he didn't quite understand their workings and their influence. And he, quote, learned from that.
Yeah, I think I do think there's a component to, maybe he thought that people would be more good-willed than they were in some ways. Mm-hmm. And the particular topic I'm thinking about, that's because it's one of my passionate topics, is the 2A. And, during his first presidency, he signed, so we had the Las Vegas shooting happened.
Right.
And, that's another whole conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
People go down the road on that, go do some Google on that. It's crazy. But, regardless of what you believe on that, it was said that the individual who facilitated that event, used a bump stock. Mm-hmm. And so Trump coming out, presumably trying to find some kind of middle ground, was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and ban the bump stocks. And so he issued an executive order banning the bump stocks.
Right.
And he made some other silly comments, at the time that he said during that press conference where he announced he was going to be doing that, and talked about like he liked taking the guns first and due process second, which is like, dude, like you have no understanding of the Constitution if you're saying that, right? So
Right.
to your point, like maybe he was like learning, right? I get that. Like, I do understand that. I'm still very salty about the 2A stuff.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
he did.
It's sad that he has to learn on our dime and our time.
Right. But I think, I do think there's argument to be made that maybe he was like, well, hey, if I just give this thing, right, and then I'm kind of giving the left something they want because I'm implementing some gun control,
Right.
and the right is having something taken away from them, which I know is not the best, but is not taking much away from them.
Right.
Right. And I think what he underestimated was the left didn't care.
Right. It's
Right.
never enough for them.
It wasn't enough.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything near what they wanted. It wasn't enough. And so, he shouldn't, he gave an inch
Yeah.
thinking that he was going to get something. And it's like, no, they wanted 40 miles.
Yeah.
And so I hope that he's learned that lesson this time.
Yeah. And
Right.
it's a lack of education too, the 2A. Like people didn't understand what he took away or gave, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I still talk to what you would consider, they call themselves kind of 2A favorable people that are like, you took the bump stocks away, so what? Not really understanding the gravity of really what that meant.
right.
What did he do? He issued an executive order to
Right.
ban a gun accessory. Okay. And if that had been allowed to stick, well, what's preventing somebody else from doing that?
Right.
For him, it was bump stock. So now some other, individual comes in, and what if they're like, oh, you know what? I don't like these pistols having grips on them. Let's
Right.
ban the grips. Or you can have a magazine more than 5 rounds, right? Like you're setting the precedent. And if that had been allowed to stand, and there's other people that are like, oh no, he was playing 3D chess or 4D chess. Like he knew he was going to issue it. He knew he was going to appoint Supreme Court justices who would strike it down. And, and so he was just setting it up so that he could get it struck down and get this case in front of the Supreme Court and all that. Like, I don't buy that.
No.
I don't think he was thinking about it on that level. I really think he was just trying to kind of, as he's cutting his teeth and learning to be president, thinking, okay, I can give everybody something.
Right. Because why anger your supporters if you don't have to?
Right.
If you're just going to get it all knocked down, like why even go there?
And that is the reality, right? I've shared on here before that, I've been pretty much my whole adult life, I've been a pretty much a Libertarian Party loyalist. In any major election, like I'm voting Libertarian. That's what I'm doing. That's what I did in 2016. I did not vote for Trump in 2016.
Yeah.
And then I can tell you after that, and he did that and he ran in 2020, I was like, no, dude, like
Right.
2A is like one of our core rights. It's as important as the 1A.
But
right?
libertarian said, here, hold my beer. Look who we're putting up.
Well, this year.
Yeah.
But in 2020, no.
No, not in 2020.
Right. So in 2020, as I'm saying, so like when he ran in 2020, I was like, no, dude,
Yeah.
like I didn't vote for you the first time, and I was willing to consider maybe I should have. Right. So the whole point being, he probably realizes now, but how badly he shot himself in the foot. I mean, I know a lot of people and conservatives were very angry over that.
Yeah.
And I would group myself into that.
Right.
And then he kind of had on the heels, he had the whole COVID thing, right?
Yeah.
And his participation in that, and and all, like adding a bunch of debt and throwing money at the development of the vaccine and Operation Warp Speed, and like kind of setting the stage for all the things that Biden ushered in.
Right.
That also made a lot of people mad.
Yeah.
So, he didn't do himself any favors his first term.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Right.
Ooh, do you think he can take the COVID vaccines off the schedule for the kids' vaccines?
I don't know. I'm not following it that close. I don't really even know what's going on with that. I know you mentioned that to me the other day that it had been added to the childhood schedule. I've not confirmed that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know
I
if that's
only
true.
saw it in one source, so I can't say that that's true either,
Yeah.
but I did see it.
I like to kind of confirm that stuff before I would talk about it. But yeah, I imagine. I mean, if he can appoint whoever he wants to head these agencies, and if they need to change the rules,
Interesting.
they would have the leeway to do that,
Yeah,
right? So
true.
I would say if that has happened, that could be a potential, as he brings his administration in.
Anyways, corner question.
So going into 2020, like I was pretty pissed off about some stuff in him, right? And I'm already, as I said, I'm a Libertarian Party loyalist. I'm like, well, I'll just vote Libertarian again because I'm certainly not voting for Biden. And no thanks, I'm not voting for the guy that implemented more gun control than Obama and is doing all this COVID craziness as it's happening, right? But coming into 2024, I did have a change of heart and a change of kind of how I'm thinking about it. And so one of the guys out here in X who's a 2A advocate. I mean, he made a post earlier in the year that, well, there's a couple of factors. One is the Libertarians, as Avis was alluding to, put up a candidate, and I'm like, what, this guy, like, this is not any libertarian idealist that I'm familiar with.
No.
There's a lot of stuff with this guy, policy wise, and gives me some trouble.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know that I can get in good conscience just kind of vote the Libertarian Party line.
Right.
So that was kind of going on. And then in addition, this guy on X that's, I can't try to remember his name, like Costa or something. Sorry, Costa. It's something. But he made a post that actually did have some impact on me, and he talked about, like, cause he also, same boat, right? He's like, yeah, Trump did it. A lot of the kind of hardcore, 2A people of, what's the word I'm looking for? Notoriety. I mean, they've been vocal about this 2A issue and the 2A issues with Trump and his history with the 2A and being pissed off about it. And, and he was one of the guys too that talked about this. But he made a pretty good argument that, despite the faults that Trump had made, he did do a pretty good job of appointing judges. And those judges did align to give us some of the big wins and the movements that have happened over the last 4 years on the 2A front.
Yes.
And some other topics. So, that did make me think a little bit more about it, and I think kind of where I landed is that I could vote Libertarian, right? I don't want to for reasons already mentioned. But if I did that and Kamala won, I know that she's not going to be appointing the kind of judges that are going to, and there's going to be opportunity to do that, right? Every president has opportunity to present to place judges. And man, I just like, it's so important. Like, we've seen how important it is, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of arrived at, well, if I can't, I just gotta let this 2A thing go a little bit and the COVID thing go a little bit. I'm still very salty about it, but if the guy is positioned to appoint judges that are going to be more favorable to the things that are important to me, well, that's a pretty darn good argument. And that's the argument that Costa, Costa, that's the wrong name, was making.
Right.
So that connected with me. And and then there were some other things, right? So, he went to the Libertarians
Right. Yeah. I
right?
was just
So
going to say
he came to the Libertarian Convention, also was kind of in the mix in there, and
historical.
it was historical. He never had another major party candidate come to the Libertarian Convention,
Yeah.
and he basically said, "Hey, let's make a deal."
Yeah. He
Like,
reasoned.
he reasoned, yeah, and he said, you guys can have your 5% and lose, or you can vote for me, and I will put a libertarian in my cabinet, and I'll give you guys some of these things that you care about. Releasing Ross Albright, for example, those sorts of things. So, that meant something to me.
Right. Yeah.
It's something. And then, you had Kennedy, who cares about some of these health things. I know some people are like, oh, that guy's a whack job or whatever. Okay, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I don't know all the issues, but I'm pretty excited. Being interested in health and fitness. It's
he's at
definitely
least
like,
bringing this issue to the forefront,
Yeah.
right? And he's saying, hey, why don't we take a closer look at some of this stuff and let's make some healthier choices for Americans if we can, right? So I think that does need to be talked about. It's a great topic. Let's
Yeah.
let's
pretty
let's
excited about
review
it.
that stuff and how our government is playing a role in that. And
Yeah.
and then he's talking about bringing Elon on to kind of help with some fiscal responsibility things, and just kind of getting this snowball rolling. I mean, Trump even, if you want to make me like really excited, he was talking about like abolishing the income tax.
Yeah.
Now, if that, I will be so surprised
Right.
if
Yeah.
that even gets any more discussion.
Yeah.
But like that would be pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
So in some ways, I was kind of won over to the idea,
Yeah. He's definitely bringing diversification.
right? To the point that maybe he's learned something and maybe he has better people advising him,
Yeah.
right? So what is a Trump presidency going to look like this round? I hope a lot better than his first one. But yeah, so that was kind of how I went from like, yeah, I'm not a Trumper, and I still wouldn't say I'm a Trumper, but it made the most logical sense to me that he needs to be the guy. And maybe there was other people out there like myself, and that's kind of how they came to it. I don't know, but so now you can put me in the camp of people that voted for Trump, and for reasons just mentioned, right, and so. I don't know. I'm just looking forward to seeing what he does with it.
Yeah.
We got to wait till he gets sworn in and see where things go and see if he keeps good on the promises he made.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm going in very skeptical based on his first term, but a little bit hopeful.
Yeah.
With some of the things that I've seen transpire over the last 6 months is kind of coming together around this.
Yeah.
So,
And then, weighing the rest of the field too. It's just everything is sort of pointing to Trump.
oh yeah, because none of these other people should be in office, in my opinion.
But we've discussed in the past. I would be hard pressed to vote for a woman.
Yes, yeah, I know, and I mean, there are plenty of other women that feel that way, and men, and yeah, I mean, that's another whole like dynamic to this thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just like of the options presented, as I kind of previously mentioned, like you're kind of left with like you got choices, right? What do you do?
Yeah.
So do you I don't know. So
Yeah.
so that's where we took it. And I feel okay about it. It's the best choice of the choices available to make, and I refuse to not use my vote for reasons already mentioned, because I think it's important for the people in Washington to understand that people do care.
Yeah.
And you demonstrate that by voting. And I could have written somebody in, I could have done whatever, right? But like, let's just try to use it smarter. So
Right.
I don't know where I go from here. Do I go back to the Libertarian Party? Part of me is like pissed off.
Yeah.
And part of me is actually really impressed, because I think there is argument to be made that the Libertarian Party just made more strides in kind of partnering with Trump as they did, and having him to the convention, and negotiating a little bit for the libertarian vote
Yeah.
to move the libertarian platform into the light a little more than it had been.
If it was intelligently architected. Otherwise, if it just happened that way, no.
Right. So was it, so that is like, is that what happened? I mean, the libertarian basically, was it architected in such a way to say, hey, you know, we have 4 or 5% of the vote, or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like, if we can push that to Trump as much as possible, like that will probably give him what he needs
Right.
to take the presidency. And so let's negotiate with him, try to move the libertarian ideals and platforms higher up in government. And in order to do that, we're also, in order to help facilitate that, we're going to throw up the worst candidate we can come up with.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, you have to get your foot in the door to progress.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And if Trump puts a true libertarian in his cabinet, that's going to be huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, you know,
That's exciting.
I think there is some reason to be a little bit excited. You know, I hope we don't come back 2 years from now and go, like,
Well, I mean, even if you do, it could have always been worse.
yeah, it could have been worse, potentially. We don't know what the future holds yet.
Right.
But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how other people are feeling about it. If they're, you know, are you kind of like really excited, like jumping up and down excited? Are you kind of like hesitantly excited? That's kind of how I would express myself.
No, okay.
Kind of a little bit like hesitantly excited about
I
it.
don't think excited is a word I've ever used with politics.
Well, if there's the opportunity to greatly move the needle on government in a way that's providing more freedoms to people, I find that pretty exciting.
Okay, fine.
I don't know if that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, I at least find the idea of that very exciting.
Right. Currently, the potential exists.
The potential possibly exists depending on where he goes with it.
Yeah.
I mean, can you just imagine if we eliminated the income tax? That would be freaking huge.
Yeah.
Right?
That would be amazing.
Yeah. And like along with it, all these programs and all this bloat and all this other stuff, like, you know, that would have lasting impact on our kids and, you know, like I think that would be good stuff. So,
well, a lot of people talk about civil war, and that's essentially what it would do, right? It would destroy the government, and then it would force a rebuilding.
I don't know that I see it that way. So
No?
it's not, you know, I think specifically they would try to do it with tariffs, like replace the tax with tariffs.
Okay.
But at least that would stop taking money out of, you know, how much now can you cover the size of government today with tariffs if that's how you did it? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not you know, I don't have enough knowledge of the economy to be able to say that. But I would imagine you would have to scale back government to some degree. Not necessarily like completely knocking it down, but
well, yeah, I didn't mean that it would knock it fully down, but it would definitely scale it back, whereas civil war would sort of flatten it out, and then you would have to be built back.
yeah.
No?
Yeah. I mean, I think a civil war would certainly be a lot more devastating.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Nobody wants that.
If we can shrink the government without that, that's a win.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed. Yes.
Yeah.
Any way we can push the needle in the right direction without violence, that's a win.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, I would say hesitantly excited, and, you know, and I know there's people out there that are probably crying and still crying about it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I never cried about it, but believe me, I've not been happy with the current administration.
Yeah.
Right. But we just have to live with stuff sometimes and speak our voices and, you know, and speak up about what's right. And, you know, if you're not excited or hesitantly excited as I am about what's, you know, what the potential is, you know, I mean, this is why we have a 1A, right? Voice your concerns. You know, like
definitely.
I mean, I don't think anybody should stop you from talking about the things that you are concerned about. And I think it'd be great if we had more talk through the issues, right? Maybe it's not as bad as you think it is, or maybe you're going to bring something to light that somebody wasn't even thinking about.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe there's, you know, there's some common ground there on all sides.
Right.
But
A lot of times people desire the same outcome. They just think it should be gotten there in different directions. So sometimes that can work through that.
Yeah. I mean, the gun topic, I think is a good example of that. Like no sane person is going to say that we want these mass shootings that are happening to continue. Right. Nobody sane is going to say that. We all want the same thing. We want the mass shootings to stop.
Yeah.
But we very much disagree on how to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe there's a different way to come at it where we can solve it.
Mm-hmm.
I currently struggle to see what that is, but I'm just one guy, and there's a lot of really smart people in this country.
Yeah.
So, maybe those are the sorts of things that can be solved. And that's just one example. There's hundreds of things like that.
Yeah.
Easy. So, all right. Well, anything else? We kind of go on about this long enough.
I think so.
Yeah.
I finally got into the conversation. At the beginning, I was like, this one should have been a solo ramble, but
yeah,
I'm in it now.
Now you're coming around.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I guess that's it for this one. I don't know what we're doing. Try to get out and hike this weekend, maybe on Saturday if the weather's conducive. So maybe we'll bring a camera, and then we got some stuff going on and some people coming into town Sunday into next week. So I don't really know what rambling's going to look like, but maybe we'll at least get one more in this week on Saturday while we're out hiking. And then we'll just have to see what the next week holds, if it can be fit in anywhere or not.
Yeah.
But okay, good stuff. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.